In the stillness of early morning light in Nyack, New York, on July 22, 1882, Edward Hopper came into the world, a child whose sharp eye and quiet temperament would one day capture the essence of modern America in unforgettable scenes. Born into a middle-class family, Hopper's earliest years were filled with the gentle rhythms of a home that nurtured both discipline and imagination. His father, Garrett Henry Hopper, a dry goods merchant of mostly Dutch ancestry, and his mother, Elizabeth Griffiths Smith, raised Edward and his sister Marion in a strict Baptist household. Hopper's father, mild and reflective, and his mother's artistic inclinations provided a fertile environment for the young boy's creative instincts. From an early age, Edward showed an extraordinary gift for drawing. By the time he was 5, his father had already noticed his keen talent and supplied him with ample art materials. Hopper's early fascination with light and shadow emerged in the simplest of sketches. A vase here, a bowl there, the interplay of darkness and illumination already taking shape in his young mind. At 10, he began signing and dating his works, among them a humble but telling charcoal sketch of a vase from 1893, foreshadowing the themes that would echo throughout his long career. As a teenager, Hopper expanded his repertoire, experimenting with pen and ink, charcoal, watercolor, and oil, and even turning his hand to political cartoons. In 1895, he created his first signed oil painting, Rowboat in Rocky Cove, copied from a reproduction in an amateur art journal. Other early works like Old Ice Pond at Nyack and Ships reveal a boy captivated by the world around him, already layering his observations with mood and atmosphere. Yet behind his growing confidence lay a boy who saw himself as somewhat awkward and gangly. His early self-portraits show a tall, thin youth with a serious expression, a hint of the introspection that would mark his adult life. His humor, sometimes impish, found its way into his cartoons. Immigrants and women dominating men in comic vignettes, a gentle rebellion against the conservative norms of his home. By high school's end in 1899, Hopper's path was clear to him. He wanted to be an artist. His parents, mindful of the precarious world of art, urged him to study commercial illustration instead. Nonetheless, they continued to support his ambitions, providing him with materials and encouragement. Hopper, influenced by the writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson, developed a personal philosophy that would inform his art for decades. The belief that great art was an expression of an inner life, a vision of the world filtered through the solitary soul. In 1899, he began formal art studies, first through a correspondence course and soon after at the New York School of Art and Design, where he would spend 6 formative years. His teachers included the renowned William Merritt Chase, who instructed him in oil painting and introduced him to the shimmering world of the French Impressionists, especially Manet and Degas. But it was Robert Henri, another of Hopper's influential teachers, who left the deepest mark. Henri's challenge, "It isn't the subject that counts, but what you feel about it," resonated with Hopper's growing sense of artistic purpose. Hopper's early years as an artist were marked by a period of intense exploration. He sketched from live models, tested the boundaries of realism, and began to find his own quiet voice in the crowded artistic world of New York. His early painting, Solitary Figure in a Theater, hints at themes that would define his later work: isolation, stillness, and the charged silence of an empty space. In 1905, necessity drove Hopper to take up illustration, designing covers for trade magazines. He detested the work, but it paid the bills. Despite his distaste, he found occasional refuge in the world of painting, making 3 trips to Europe, each centered in Paris. There, Hopper worked alone, largely immune to the avant-garde movements swirling around him. Of the European masters, it was Rembrandt who impressed him most deeply. He once described the Night Watch as past belief in its reality. Back in New York, Hopper returned to illustration reluctantly and struggled to find his own voice as a painter. His progress was slow, punctuated by long periods of creative inertia. His friend, Walter Tittle, described him during this time as a man suffering from unconquerable inertia, spending days staring at a blank canvas, paralyzed by uncertainty. Yet, even in these difficult years, Hopper found occasional breakthroughs. His first major outdoor painting in America, Squam Light, captured during a trip to Gloucester, Massachusetts, in 1912, marked a turning point. His first real sale came the following year at the Armory Show, when sailing fetched $250, a hopeful sign for the young artist. But recognition was slow to arrive. He continued to supplement his income through illustration work and occasional commissions, even creating movie posters and promotional materials for a film company in 1914. The cinema and theater would become recurring motifs in his later paintings, their quiet drama and play of light deeply influencing his artistic vision. In 1915, frustrated by his oil paintings, Hopper turned to etching. By 1923, he had completed most of the 70 etchings that would define this chapter of his career. Scenes of Paris and New York, couples in silent communion, solitary figures at windows. His work began to attract notice, earning him the Logan Prize and the W.A. Bryan Prize for his etchings in 1923. His oil paintings during this period, like New York Interior and Moonlight Interior, carried a quiet poetry. Figures lost in thought, scenes bathed in the hush of twilight. Then, in 1923, came a meeting that would change everything. During a painting trip in Gloucester, he reconnected with Josephine Nivison, a lively, talented artist who would become his wife and muse. They were opposites. She was gregarious, sociable, and open. He was shy, quiet, and fiercely independent. But it was Josephine who encouraged Hopper to return to watercolors, to capture the play of light on the homes and streets of Gloucester. With her support, his work found new life and new audiences. In 1924, the couple married, and Joe became not just his partner but his manager, his model, and his fiercest advocate. That same year, Hopper had his first solo exhibition at the Frank Rain Gallery, where his watercolors sold out. His mature style, spare, quiet, and rich in mood, was fully realized. Architectural forms bathed in sunlight and shadow, solitary figures lost in thought, scenes of city life and rural stillness. These would become the signature elements of Hopper's work. Financial stability finally arrived, and with it, a quieter life devoted to art. Hopper and Joe divided their time between a small apartment in New York and summers in Cape Cod, where the light and landscape inspired some of his most powerful paintings. His 1925 workhouse by the railroad marked his artistic maturity, a haunting vision of a lonely Victorian house that captured the stark beauty of the American scene. Through the 1930s and 40s, Hopper's work deepened in complexity and resonance. In New York Movie, 1939, a solitary usherette stands lost in thought in an empty theater, her isolation framed by the warm glow of the cinema. Nighthawks, 1942, perhaps his most famous work, shows a diner in the dead of night, its patrons adrift in their own thoughts, the bright interior cutting through the darkness like a beacon of uneasy calm. Despite his growing fame, Hopper remained a reserved, almost reclusive figure. He and Joe lived modestly, driving through New England in search of inspiration, painting the quiet corners of American life. Even as the art world shifted around him, abstract expressionism rising in the 1950s, Hopper held to his vision, producing works like Morning Sun, 1952, and Intermission, 1963, studies of solitude and the subtle drama of light. His final painting, Two Comedians, 1966, shows two pantomime actors taking their final bow, a tender, enigmatic farewell that he shared with Joe. Hopper died in his Washington Square studio on May 15, 1967, and was buried in his hometown of Nyack. Joe followed him 10 months later. Edward Hopper's legacy is one of stillness and depth. His paintings, whether of city streets, lonely diners, or sunlit rooms, invite viewers to linger, to contemplate the quiet poetry of everyday life. In the interplay of light and shadow, in the silent tension of his solitary figures, Hopper found the soul of America. His work endures not only as a testament to his singular vision, but as an eternal reflection of our own inner lives. The fleeting moments, the quiet revelations, the delicate balance of melancholy and hope.